think that being careful around their relationship is what is going to keep them safe. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Not guard your relationship. As I said in the other video, finding the root cause will help you to avoid problems before they ruin another relationship. Remember that I said when you don't know a person's belief system and how it impacts them, and when you don't know yours and how yours impacts you, you will constantly be solving for problems that may not even be existent. There is a scene that explains everything that I'm about to explain here to you, from The Godfather, of course. And it's not a famous one. It's the quiet moment before Michael Corleone leaves for Sicily. Nobody's protecting him, no family around him, no father in the next room. He has to become his own protection right there, alone, because nobody was coming. No one was coming to save him. I didn't grow up in the Corleone family, but I grew up learning that same lesson in my own way, years before I ever understood what it was teaching me. I can spot real love and fake love when the fake love begins its performance. In fact, I'll tell you right now, there is even nothing like fake love. There is either love or there isn't. What we call fake love is other things that try to have the appearance of love, like infatuation, codependency. And so while most people cannot spot, or while most people are hoping that those will turn into real love, the truth is that no matter how many relationships they go through, they can't figure this thing out until they deal with that root cause that I've talked about. And I'll show you exactly why in a minute. Remember that while most advice is focused on telling you how the other person is doing bad to you, doing wrong to you, our focus here is on how you can actually take the driver's seat in your relationship so that you can create the relationships that you want. Because even the person that you're thinking about, that person may not know their internal compass. And if they don't know their internal compass, they don't know your internal compass. So it's like two blind mice just running around, trying their best and never actually knowing what to do, but relying on guesswork. Everything is on the external, but our relationships are not controlled from the external, they're controlled from psychology. So when you don't know a person's belief system and how it impacts them, nor yours, you will constantly be busy solving for problems that may not even exist. Now let's start with this. Here is something that should have been taught most people in childhood, but wasn't. Anything that you are able to give to yourself in abundance, you will not need to get from another person. You will not need to get from someone else. And I know that sounds obvious. If I can give it to myself in abundance, I don't need to get it from someone else. But hold on. Most people will not think of what I'm talking about. They're not thinking that this is something that they can also give to themselves. It's a way of gassing yourself up so much that another person's gas up of you is not necessarily going to be the excitement of your life. It doesn't confuse you into thinking that you have to depend on it now to live. And I don't say that as theory. I say it because of how I actually grew up and what I learned along the way. So while most people grow up at home naturally soaking and basking in love and acceptance without ever having to think about it, I didn't quite have that, because of many years that I spent away from home. And I also went to boarding school. I spent years, not weeks, away from home. People went to boarding school for a certain period in their lives, before which they had already had this period of basking at home, surrounded and enveloped in the love and warmth of their parents and family. I had a different journey. So because my parents weren't always there for all the moments, there were moments when I ran into people who couldn't be bothered. There were moments when I had to eventually learn to provide that protection for myself because there was no one in the room to do it. And I had to do it to survive. So when I learned independent thinking, but many people in the developmental stages of life didn't have to do independent thinking. They were actually instructed on what to do. So for many years, I thought I had lost out on so much. Turns out that it's a gift. I learned how to think outside the box for a regular child. And whatever you do for years, you get practice. Your brain configures to that. So I also learned how to love myself, how to identify where I am safe and where I am not safe. And it's something that can be learned. I did it because I had to. It just had to be done. And so what that did to me was to rewire inside me. And it's the exact thing that I want you to learn. And that's why it's a process. And when you learn this, you'll almost become like a human X-ray machine as far as your relationships go. Because tell me, when you know exactly how to give yourself, you're going to be able to identify it when someone else is or isn't providing it. So you'll be able to recognize real connection the second that it walks into a room. And you'll be able to also recognize the fake one the second that it opens its mouth. Not because you're smarter than other people, but because you've had practice.
I also know how to make others feel safe because you know how it registers. But when you don't actually know it, you resort to trying to win people over.
You're stuck interpreting things at surface value, but
relationships aren't an external job. That's why people struggle. It's a job that's executed from the inside. That's why people are stuck struggling with efforts for decades, and sometimes it will just never click. And that again is why people resort to learning their love languages. Those are just second-hand approaches. That's what I call relationship labor. Okay, let me ask you something. If you learn a person's love language, but they don't like the tone in which you speak it, or the timing when you choose to speak it, then what's next? Because you're using second-hand methods, as I promise you, you aren't touching the root of the matter. This is why this is just endless labor. This is only what people have to resort to when the proper approach has been neglected. So now people begin to essentially experience relationships like playing a game of chess. I into the idea that you need to learn love languages, you need to, but that may just be endless. And I'm also not going to pretend that everybody is capable of doing this internal. That's actually why some people just don't struggle already. And that's the same reason why some people just continuously struggle. But the unfortunate thing is that people are buying into the idea that they have to do all this external work. And that's why people are stuck thinking I'm doing my best.
But what I didn't understand for a long time is that this had started now to come naturally to me. And so I didn't realize why thousands of people around me genuinely could not see what seemed so simple, what seemed so obvious. What I thought was common sense was actually a skill, one that I had built by accident, totally by accident, in isolation over years. And so when I started to advise older people in their marriages, as an unmarried young girl, it was strange that the things that I would tell them would eventually show up years later. This is not me trying to prove anything to you. I'm trying to tell you that you can also do this so that you're able to interpret your relationships. And this is why I constantly say that relationships aren't hard. But people have been convinced that relationships are complicated because human beings are complicated. It'll be complicated to you if you haven't had practice interpreting people and what is happening in your relationships. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Not guard your relationship, not guard your reputation. People think that being careful around their relationship is what is going to keep them safe. And so they put up walls. They put up walls, you're acting in fear. But that is not the instruction that we're given. Guarding your heart does not mean that you should put bars around your heart so that it's not touched. Because when you do that, your heart won't even be touched. There will be no connection between you and the other person. So the fear now is, how much allowance do I give in order to be able to have connection that doesn't put me at risk? You are in trouble because you've been listening to the world. Because teachings have infiltrated your mind. And because whatever is sitting there unguarded is the thing that quietly now runs your life. It's a command that is available to everyone. The problem with the understanding and interpretation of this is that people generally think that these are religious injunctions. You think that it's about guarding your heart from temptation or evil. It isn't. It really isn't. It'll take more time for me to show you exactly how these things impact us in our lives, in our day-to-day lives. And this is where neuroscience actually agrees with 3,000-year-old scripture, which most people don't expect. Like I say, whatever you do for years, your neural pathways adapt. That's not an opinion. That's how the brain works. That is the meaning of guard your heart. For out of it flow, how is it said again? Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Simple meaning. So a person can end up in the exact same painful pattern over and over and still believe, genuinely believe, that they are just doing what is normal and natural because the pathway is so worn in. It doesn't feel like a pattern anymore. It just feels like personality. It feels that way to me too, before I even understood what I was actually looking at. So all our relationships work according to who we are. That is not to say that if somebody is treating you in a way that is negative, that is because you are negative. No, that is not it. There is never any doubt that the other person is doing what they're doing, but they're only half the equation. But when we don't understand what parts of us are featuring in relationships and how they are affecting us and our relationship dynamics, we end up in problems that should never even have been part of our lives. I think about a man that I watched for years, married, seemed devoted, the kind of guy who would never even miss an anniversary. But his devotion was compulsive. It wasn't something that was naturally flowing. It was learned. He had learned, as do so many of us, that this is what you do to show care and affection and attention. Learning. A lot of us go about performing. We're producing performance in our relationships. And that means that everything about what we're doing is on the external. But where two souls cannot connect, two souls cannot connect on what we're doing on the external. That is why a person can appreciate all the things that you're doing on the external, but they still feel something missing. The vacuum, that vacuum is in the soul, is inside, because there is no true connection. So while the guy was performing all those things, never missing anniversary celebrations, producing roses, taking his wife, like doing all the greatest things, there was still no connection. Connection was lacking because those things were not real in that sense of it. So this is why people struggle in relationships. It's not for not trying or for bad intentions. You can have all the best intentions. But when what is on the internal is unable to meet what is on the internal of the other person, you're always going to be terrified that something is going to cost you this relationship. You see, the world is about role play. Therefore, all our relationships are about people playing their roles. And if you don't understand your role properly, you will never be able to decipher what you are doing in your relationship or even what the other person is doing. How do you expect to ever break a pattern that you've never even traced back to its roots when you spent years calling it normal, thinking that it's normal? Don Corleone never had to say to his sons, be careful out there. He just built systems, relationships, an internal discipline in them long before danger ever showed up. Because he understood that dealing with a threat after it arrives is already too late. Root cause work is the same. You don't wait for the pattern to blow up in your face, in your fifth relationship, 5 years down your relationship. You find the root while you still have the chance to actually change direction. In fact, you find the root before you begin to create the foundation, because the roots, what you have on the inside, is what is going to help you to know the person, to identify the person when you see them. Telling you this for free. This is why people make bad choices, because everything looks perfect on the external. They are doing everything that you want them to do. They are doing everything that you believe makes you happy. But when you have never understood your own internal systems, even 20 years down the line, you meet the surprise. And this is what MMT does. It's not a seminar, it's not relationship advice. It walks you through tracing your own patterns to where they actually came from, helping you to build patterns that prepare you to creating foundations for good relationships. And once you can understand this, you'll be able to identify and understand the person that is standing in front of you when they show up. And so you can join MMT. Use my details that are on the channel to schedule a one-on-one to see if we can work together so that I can help you to get to the root cause of what may be getting in the way of you having fulfilling relationships. And this is not even just about romantic relationships. No. Because no matter who is in front of us, whether it's an intimate romantic relationship or a friendship, whatever it is, or even a business partner, it's the same psychology that traverses everything across board, because we're dealing with human psychology. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." And that's the whole video. And so watch all the videos before this, like at least the last 10 to 12, 13 videos before this, so that you can have the understanding of your belief audit. So you can do a belief audit so that you can understand why you keep having the same person in different bodies, in different situations. It helps you to understand the specific beliefs that are running underneath the patterns that we have named here today. Remember to like this video if it touched you. Like it, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who might be calling their own pattern normal or natural, so that they can begin to get some insights. And I'll see you in the next video. I wish you love.